An estimated 100,000 people have attended an open-air mass in a central Budapest square on Pope Francis's third and final day in Hungary. The Pope urged Hungarians not to close the door on migrants and those who he said were foreign or unlike us. Amongst those at the service was the Hungarian Prime Minister himself, Viktor Orbán, who's repeatedly criticised migration and was responsible for constructing a wall to stop people crossing the border from neighbouring Serbia and Croatia. 39% of the population in Hungary are Catholic, and Pope Francis had last visited the Central European country briefly in 2021. Well, let's talk to Mark Roscoe in Budapest, who is the managing editor of the Journal of Global Catholicism. Thank you for joining us here on BBC News. How would you assess this trip has gone for the Pope?
Well, I think many were actually quite surprised that Pope Francis did decide to come back to Hungary, since, as you said, he was here very recently in 2021. The Pope, I think, really has a special pastoral concern for Hungary because, as you mentioned, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has led the country and is currently leading the country, including its Catholic Church, in a very nationalist and xenophobic direction. Orbán frequently uses racist, some would even say fascist language to talk about Hungary's racial and ethnic homogeneity. He claims also to be defending Europe's Christian values. The two men, Pope Francis and Viktor Orbán, have in the past clashed repeatedly over these claims. This visit has really been no different.
And what do you make of the location of his final mass?
Well, certainly Pope Francis was seated right in front of Hungary's parliament building, which is the seat of political power in Hungary. And he spoke directly in his homily, in his address, to Hungarian politicians. He mentioned them specifically as a group, and he mentioned specifically to them that they should be like an open door. He addressed the political class explicitly and their beliefs and the way they have led the country towards in a racist and xenophobic direction. But then, in a very dramatic moment, he actually departed from the official Vatican text of his homily, and he repeated again that exhortation, be like an open door. And he even took his pages and he thrust them up and down the pages that he was reading from for emphasis. So clearly he wanted Hungary's politicians and especially Viktor Orbán to hear that message clearly and directly.
How sad and painful it is to see closed doors, he said. The closed doors of our selfishness with regard to others. How did Viktor Orbán respond to that, and Hungarians in general, that criticism?
Well, the open-air mass in front of the Parliament building was really packed, and beforehand, the atmosphere was full of tension and lots of excitement. The overflow areas on side streets where people could view on screens were full to overflowing, and the gates were closed a half an hour ahead of time because the square was actually full. And this was an official visit to Hungary, and as I said, the Pope was seated right in front of the seat of political power. But Budapest itself is actually an international city with really a large and international a group of high technology workers. For instance, the technology sector is quite vibrant here in the city. And actually at the Mass, I met Rizwan Shekoni, a Catholic from Nigeria, who had come with his girlfriend to see the Pope. And Shekoni is an IT specialist, he said to me, and he's lived in Hungary for over 5 years. He praised the Mass for being both solemn and exciting, but also called the political situation in Hungary tough, in particular the government's immigration policies.
Okay.
I do have to say that my read of the crowd in general, the crowd did actually seem disappointed, I have to say, by the Pope's message during his homily. When he spoke those words, be like an open door, there was really no response in the crowd. And then afterwards, there was very light applause, despite the fact that beforehand people had been cheering and even waving at the screens when the Pope appeared on them as he was approaching the site of the open-air mass. So it was really eye-catching, actually, to see such a muted response from the crowd and lukewarm applause, really.
That's fascinating. Mark Roscoe, thank you very much for that assessment and your time. Thank you.
Thank you.